Hello and welcome to the Doofcast, a film and TV podcast from Doof Media. I am your host, Scott Daly, and joining me, as always, the wickedly talented Adele Dazim.
Let it go.
Full disclosure, I had to explain that joke to Matt before we started the episode because he had never seen John Travolta just horribly mispronounce just like the worst mispronunciation of a name I've just ever seen in my entire life.
It's great. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it. It's exactly what's on the tin. It's so funny.
Hello and welcome. It's award season, and in preparation for the 2025 Academy Awards, Matt and I have decided to once again play catch up and watch all the Best Picture nominees just in time to be 1 week late for the Oscars.
As is tradition.
Yeah. As with last year, the Best Picture nominees haven't actually been announced yet, but it's 8 weeks till the Oscars right now, and we can't wait. So I've gone ahead and selected the 10 films that I and a lot of the pundits out there think will probably be nominated, and we'll just cover the ones we think are the most obvious until January 19th comes and they actually announce the Best Picture winners. It's actually supposed to be January 17th, but they've delayed it for 2 days because of the horrible wildfires just wreaking havoc on Los Angeles right now. They might actually end up delaying it even further. I mean, the amount of damage that's been done in LA and surrounding areas over the past few days have been just catastrophic. It's awful.
Yeah, it's really awful. Yeah.
But we're going to proceed right now as if we're going to know the nominees after just a couple episodes here. And if that doesn't end up being the case, we'll figure out what we're going to do. Hopefully, as we watch these movies, we're not going to watch anything that doesn't end up on the list. I'm pretty sure at least the next 2 or 3 movies are locks. But I also, Matt, am less confident about this list of 10 than I was last year's list of 10. Last year, of course, we can all remember I nailed it. I got all 10 exactly right. This year, there's 1 or 2 that I think could fall off and a couple movies that could jump in. So we'll see. We'll see.
Well, don't worry about it. If we get some of them wrong, I'll just be furious with you.
Imagine, spoilers for our future conversation. Can you imagine if Wicked didn't get nominated for Best Picture and you watched this movie for no reason?
Oh my God. The mere thought of that.
All right, so these are the 10 films I think are going to be nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards this year. We have Anora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Emelia Perez, Nickel Boys, A Real Pain, Sing Sing, and of course the movie we are covering today, Wicked. Now, I do want to just say, Matt, before we go any further, we did an episode on Dune Part 2 last year. We watched that movie, we both did when it came out, and we did an episode on already, so we don't need to watch or talk about Dune Part 2 as part of an Oscars catch-up, so we're just not going to do that. So we only have 9 films on this list that we need to watch and do episodes on. So yes, the Oscars are in 8 weeks, but we only have 9 to watch, so we'll only be 1 week late. Again.
Perfectly timed it.
So Matt, of these 9 films, besides I guess 10, we'll count Dune so we can throw you a bone there. Of these 10 films, which do you know anything about whatsoever?
Nothing. I've watched Dune, and then of course we watched Wicked for this conversation.
Okay, that's it.
I literally know nothing about these other ones.
This is why the Academy Awards are not doing well. Because even you, someone that I would describe as a semi-cinephile, have no idea about what any of these movies are. I think this is a weird year, Matt. I think this is like the motto for 2024 was survive till 25 in the film industry, just like make it through this year. And so we have a list of movies that I've heard are very good, but not like as strong a contenders as previous years. For my part, of course, I've seen Wicked now. I also saw Dune Part 2 as well, and I saw A Complete Unknown a couple weeks ago. The rest of these I have not seen either. I've heard of all of them, though. I know a little bit about what these movies are, so I'm not completely in the dark like you are, but it's going to be interesting. I think we're going to see some really good movies here, but I'm kind of curious if we're going to leave. Like, I think we left the 10 nominees last year with like, wow, that was just a collection of incredible movies and also Maestro. And then I wonder this year how we're gonna feel. You know,
Yeah, I mean, even Maestro, I had a lot of great stuff to say about it. I will
sure.
say, yeah, there was not a single movie last year that I wasn't glad that I watched it and that I didn't have fun talking about. Unfortunately, that's not true this year.
Oh no! Oh no! That doesn't bode well for the only movie on this list you've seen.
Maybe we'll have a good time talking about it.
I think we
Maybe
are. I think we are.
that part will be true.
Yeah, so I mean, even like looking like right now, looking at this top 10 list, like what is the favorite on this list to win Best Picture? I have no idea. Emelia Perez did very good at the Golden Globes last weekend, surprisingly well. But that Golden Globes is a very international group of voters. It is a French movie, so it doesn't surprise me, I guess, that it did that well, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to do very well in the Academy Awards. The Brutalist also did very well, which is a movie I think you, Matt, are going to like a whole lot. I'm not going to tell you anything about it, but I really do think you're going to enjoy The Brutalist. That has a chance of doing really, really well as well. And then like Wicked has been kind of like hanging out as a real potential surprise Best Picture winner, which I think we're gonna maybe have some thoughts about as we go through our review of that movie. But
Yeah.
uh, I'm looking forward to this. I love this project. I love catching up on these movies. This is something that I try to do myself, even if we're not doing podcasts on it. But as we both know, I don't have time to watch any content that isn't turned into my own content. So the only way I can watch these movies is through this podcast. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, neither of us actually ever watch entertainment. We just work, which is watching entertainment.
Yeah, it is amazing. I never like considered myself like a hard worker. I've never been like the type of person, you like read stories and see movies about like workaholics and things like that. And I was like, I'm never gonna put myself in that thing. But what I've done is I turned the thing I like to do for fun into my work.
Uh-huh.
And so I guess I kind of am a workaholic because I feel like I constantly have to be watching things or reading things or thinking about the things I watch or read. So how did this happen? I don't know. It did.
I did it to you is the answer.
It's true.
Yeah. Just, and to be clear, man, this movie really was work.
All right, let's get into it then. Let's talk about this week's movie. We are going to talk all about Wicked, Part 1.
Something has changed within me.
She doesn't give a twig what anyone thinks.
Something is not the same.
Of course she does. She just pretends not to.
The wonderful Wizard of Oz summons you to the Emerald City. Come with me.
What?
To meet the wizard.
I couldn't possibly. This is your moment. I'm coming.
The great and terrible.
Matt, what is this movie all about?
Elphaba, a misunderstood young woman because of her green skin, and Glinda, a popular girl, become friends at Shiz University in the land of Oz. After an encounter with the wonderful Wizard of Oz, their friendship reaches a crossroads.
This movie was written by Winnie Holzman, Dana Fox, and Gregory Maguire. It is based on the Broadway musical, which was itself loosely based on a novel. The film was directed by John Chu, and it stars Cynthia Erivo, Ariana Grande, and Jeff Goldblum as the wonderful Wizard of Oz. All right, Matt. So tell me about your overall experience with Wicked.
It was 2 hours and 40 minutes. It's as long as Dune Part 2, but nothing happens.
That's not true. She flies on a broomstick.
A few
and
things
the monkeys
happen.
get wings.
They're spread out over 2 hours and 40 minutes. And their songs. Okay, I'm basically going to steal your talking point here, so I apologize. But
go for it.
That, like, the whole musical is supposed to be like 2.5 hours, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And they took
The entire musical, both acts, is 2 hours and 45 minutes. That includes the 15-minute intermission between Act 1 and Act 2.
so they took that much musical, which
Mhm.
you have to assume is sort of a well-oiled machine, because all popular Broadway things are. By the way, I like musicals. I don't hate musicals. And they just stretched it out. The songs are fine, but then everything that's not the songs, which is really most of the movie, is so slow. And like there's like whole scenes where I'm just like, what's happening? Like there nothing is happening. This is my main problem. Okay, this is my main. I there are good things to say about this movie.
Sure.
I have
Absolutely.
plenty of good things to say, but man, it was like physically hard to watch the movie because of how boring and slow it is. That's my first take.
Sure, I like it. Yeah, so I want to kind of set the stage here. For me, I don't just like musicals. I really like musicals. I love watching musicals. I love musical theater. My wife and I try to get up to New York City as often as we can. We're actually going next weekend for our anniversary, and I think we're going to see 2 shows while we're up there. So like this is not like a this isn't for me type of opinion I have here, because I think musicals and movie musicals are very much for me. But I never really cared for the Wicked musical. Like I saw it. I don't believe I saw the original cast version. I think it was later with a different cast. And I thought it was okay. I
Mhm.
thought it was okay. Definitely not one of my favorite musicals. Not one that I would become obsessed with. And I had really low expectations going into this movie because of that. And in many ways, the movie met those low expectations, and in some ways it was worse than what I was expecting. um I think the story of this musical is just kind of bad, and I think that is like an inescapable problem that rears its head in this movie. And I think that's what you're talking about, is that like what was reflected to you as boring is just that like this is not a good story. It's like it's pieces of what could be a good story, but the way it's told is so clunky and weird, especially I think in this version, that you just have very little to like grab onto um outside of the musical performances, which I do think are very good. Like I have a lot of very good things to say about Ariana Grande in this movie. But there's like 2 good songs in this movie, and then the rest are kind of fine. And
Yeah.
and this might be jumping the gun a little bit, because the thing I'm most curious about with this thing is, of course, they are making Wicked Part 2, which will be the second act of the musical. um Matt, the second act of the musical has no good songs in it, none.
Okay.
um and it's also a much different feel. Like it gets very into like the politics of animal torture.
Oh, good.
And like it's just a very different beast. And like I think that's okay in a musical when you're seeing both parts one after another. You leave the experience after 3 hours and you're remembering the banger songs that were in it and the characters, and you're having a good time. I think it's going to be a very different experience when you go see the sequel to this movie 2 years later and have to watch presumably a 3-hour sequel that doesn't have anything that makes the story good in it. Um, I'm kind of flabbergasted that they chose to tell the story this way, but
Yeah.
yeah.
My one line diagnosis of the story is it's a very simple story, except where it's contorting itself into a pretzel to try to fit into the Wizard of Oz lore, where it becomes incredibly overcomplicated.
Yes.
And there's a kind of dramatic inertness that comes along with that, where you just don't care. Like the thing with her sister and the Munchkin guy, I don't care about any of that.
Well, I mean, okay, so it's been a while since I've seen the actual stage musical. I felt like both Nessa and Bach were more fleshed out characters in the musical, and maybe it's just because they get more time in the second act, and that's what I'm remembering. But like, I remember caring about them a lot more and feeling like they were much more key important parts of the story than this movie makes it seem to be, where it's just the love triangle on the simplest, most boring version of it possible. Um,
Yeah.
and Nessa like gets no screen time like whatsoever.
Yeah, it's weirdly directed because it has that quality that I've heard described before, where it feels like it's rushing through everything and yet simultaneously nothing is happening,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
kind of the worst of all worlds. And so, like
yeah,
those characters, I could almost feel the story begging for some kind of moment where I become dramatically anchored in one or both of those characters.
sure,
A- and it was almost like they were like, well, we're not gonna do those moments in the actual movie parts because that's what the musical parts are for. But
sure,
then it didn't work in the musical parts. And again, I like musicals. I don't. I think those are often, whether it be a Broadway musical or a Disney movie that has songs in it, like those very often are the parts where the characters get their kind of moment of emotional
yeah,
um expression, and then you feel that connection. But it didn't work for me, and I have to admit, like early in this conversation, that probably an hour into this movie I like turned on it and I was just like, I'm so bored and annoyed. And then past that point I wasn't really giving it a chance, which is like bad of me. But uh and that doesn't happen very often, and I'm just saying
yeah.
it because like that's how like aggressively not having a good time I was in the first hour.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's fair. It's funny because I think a lot of what I can't stand comes after that part you're talking about
Uh-huh.
there. I think everything in Oz up until Defying Gravity, which is a great song. It's like the song from this musical, and I think it's very well performed here. I liked it a lot. But everything in Oz up until that, I could not stand. I hated all the stuff in Oz. I thought
Mhm.
this is pointless. What are we doing? Like, I had forgotten about like the Grimoire and like this new plot point that's like introduced in the 11th hour of this movie. That's like, actually, we need you to read from this magical book. And then like I feel like everything with the reveal of the wizard being the bad guy, which I think everyone had kind of seen coming, like that all feels like it happens in like 5 seconds. And it's like, whoa, no, like how quickly did this all go down? And it's just like it's like a whirlwind, while also, yes, to your point, being an almost 3 hour movie.
Mhm.
It just felt so clunkily told, and it really frustrated me at times. And it especially frustrating because I do think like the performances are very, very good. um
Mhm.
I think Cynthia Erivo does a very, let me phrase this correctly, does a very good job singing in this movie. Cynthia Erivo, I don't think she does a too good of a job acting in the non-singing parts in this movie.
Mhm.
I think her Elphaba, when she's not performing, is awful.
Mhm.
Like maybe that's too strong of a word, but like completely unlikable. She plays her so stiff. Like this is like, look, here's the thing. This is a very silly story, right? This is a
Mhm.
musical about what if the Wicked Witch of the West was actually just a misunderstood person and wasn't actually the bad guy. What if? That's a silly concept. We start the movie with the death of the main character and then say, no, she was actually misunderstood, and she was just it's because she was green and everyone else was a liar, and she's actually incredibly kind and compassionate, and it's this whole misunderstanding, which just sets you off on a weird foot. But then she like plays her, and I like, I can kind of understand the direction of this is like you want her to be, she's very used to being judged and dismissed, so she plays her like very cold and very stiff, and like that breaks every time she starts to sing, which is like her inner voice, her inner monologue coming out, the rule about singing in these things. But like we are supposed to believe by the end of this movie that Fiyero uh actually is in love with her. That these are two people that have fallen in love with each other. Um and I just don't actually.
Yeah, I agree that I mean, again, by that point in the movie, I was already like gone emotionally. But yes, in the scene when they're supposed to be falling in love, when they run away from the classroom because she's cast the spell, inadvertently cast the sleeping spell.
Yeah, and they
I
have to
I
save the lion that is definitely just a random lion and is
Yes.
definitely not um the lion that kills her later.
Yeah. Right. Uh, I'm like intellectually aware that they're trying to make this a scene where like, oh, these characters are falling in love because they have this connection, but I'm just like, I don't understand how, like, what the connection is supposed to be. And let's say, for the sake of argument, maybe you don't need to understand it. Maybe you just need to feel it. I also don't feel it.
Yeah. No.
Um, I almost want. Sorry to like break out of the thing, but like I almost don't understand. I'm not being a dick here. I want someone who likes this movie to explain to me what they like about it.
I think people really like the songs. I mean, this is the kind of like, the songs are fun.
Yeah.
It's kind of like and I don't mean this in a dismissive way, but it's kind of like this is a kind of sort of like a girl power type story, right? These are two women who hate each other at first and then end up being best friends by the end of the story. Although obviously not the end of the story for reasons that because you've seen The Wizard of Oz. And I think they like that portion of it, the performances. Like like if you're vibing with these songs, I think these songs are very good.
Mhm.
And I am not vibing with all the songs. I really like What Is This Feeling, which is the Loathing one. I really like that one, and I really like Defying Gravity. And I guess like Popular is okay. People really talk about The Wizard and I, which is the Elphaba like I Want song that happens at the very beginning. I don't really like that one. I don't really like I'm Not That Girl. I don't really like Dancing Through Life. The song Dancing Through Life, you were talking about how nothing happens in the non-singing parts of this movie, and
Mhm.
everything happens in the music. Dancing Through Life has to like pick up every plot point at the midpoint of the movie. It's
Mhm.
like the second act transition song, and it has to like hoist every plot that's happening for every character at the same time, and it's just like too much to put on one number. And it's just too much. So yeah, I mean, I'm not. You're not asking the person that loves this musical in the first place. So, but that's my guess, is that they
Yeah.
just really like the music.
Well, sure. So I I'm not even saying like if I went and I saw this musical, I bet I would like it because again, the story is kind of so, but you're watching these great performances.
Mhm.
That can be fun. That can elevate kind of basic material. It's the boringness that's the problem. It's the stretched outness. I like. I think it would honestly have been better if they had just done it in one 2.5 hour movie. Just do the whole thing,
Yeah.
and the talking parts, the non-singing parts. I haven't seen the musical, so I don't know how those work in the musical, but just do it very stylized. Like
Yeah.
the movie is most successful to me when it is super stylized and silly and unrealistic. Like I was actually kind of having fun when the young prince comes to the school to shiz, and they and he seduces everyone with his roguishness, and he's like, we're not going to read in the library, we're going to dance, and they start dancing, and they're like swinging around in circles on the there's not a word for it because it doesn't actually exist in real life, but
Yeah,
like
for some reason the library has like a hamster wheel book storage thing.
that's perfect. I love that. That was fun. I like that. That was visually fun. That was fun to watch. That was a fun idea. It was
Yeah.
a fun song. There was a lot of energy, and I was like, the movie should just be this.
I agree. And I liked that. The choreography of that sequence was really good. There's other sequences where the choreography is really good. I think a lot of the choreography of Loathing and of What Is This Feeling is very, very solid. But here's where I think the problem with this adaptation, and maybe the musical in general, but I think specifically this adaptation, I can pinpoint it perfectly. It's the no music Elphaba dance in the Oz Dust Ballroom
Uh-huh.
that goes on for an interminable amount of time.
Uh-huh.
It goes on for so long, and it is so awkward. And this, by the way, this scene occurs in the show. It's not like they made this sequence up. It's just like way shorter and way more kind of funny instead of cringe.
Uh-huh.
And the movie just holds on it forever. And what's worse is I don't think the movie does a good job of like getting you to understand what the fuck she's doing, because like there's no like she's just what the story is supposed to be conveying is she's just doing like random shit because she's just trying to make a point and prove that she's different from everyone else, so she's just doing like random dance shit, but it doesn't do a good job of conveying that. It's just like, what are you doing? I kept like wondering, did I miss a scene where it explained why this person would be dancing this way? And no, you didn't. It's just that this is what it is. It just goes on for so long, and then Galinda joins in the dance, and it keeps going on for long, and there's no music, and it's just the two of them dancing for like 5 minutes, and it's just like, my God, this is awful.
Yeah. Yeah. There were a lot of moments like that where I was, you know, the movie is not working when I start really paying attention to the blocking,
Mm-hmm.
because you shouldn't be noticing the blocking at all. And I'm just like, why are they like walking around each other so many times? Everyone's moving around, and I'm not even talking about during the songs. During songs, you're supposed to. It's basically a dance.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about scenes where people are just talking, and for some reason they keep moving around each other to a distracting degree. And it's not because it's like, oh, it's fun and dynamic. It's like, we know this is a boring scene,
And we're
to
like
make
trying,
it not, yeah. Right. Because we know people would just fall asleep if we did it shot reverse shot. We're gonna have characters standing and moving and circling each other and all this stuff. That's just like a bad sign for your script at a simple level.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Like, I don't like, there's a lot of people that really like this movie, and I don't think they're wrong for enjoying it.
Yeah.
But man, like, I was just, and I think we should say, I think this is the most amount of times I've seen a movie before we did an episode on it ever. Because we showed this movie to my son on New Year's Eve. He loved it and has wanted to watch it. So I've been watching it like piecemeal, like 15 minutes every morning while I'm getting the kids ready to go to school. He's watching 15 minutes of it, and that just carries over into me watching it like 7 times, it feels like, over the past week and a half. So I've seen it a lot, and so I've gotten to look at it a lot and examine it a lot, and I agree with you. Like, obviously these are problems born from the movie not working with me, and things that in other movies I would probably just shrug off. One of the things I can't get over is how bad the movie looks, just from like a color perspective. Like, this is Oz, right? This is supposed to be this bright, vibrant place. And I feel like all the brightness and vibrancy is technically there, but then they like went over it with like a dulling palette to just take a little bit of the brightness of the color out and just make it kind of a dull looking movie a little bit. Like, I think this is just like modern filmmaking where everything just like, we want to do like mute realistic colors, and it just felt like it was someone like put a shade over a colorful movie, and that really frustrated me.
Yeah, I don't even know what it is exactly. I don't know if it's color grading in post, or they just want like, I know exactly what you mean. It's funny because the very first scene of the movie I liked. It shows this puddle of water with her hat in it where she's been murdered in cold blood. And then the camera like goes out the window, and we follow the flying monkeys as there's this acrobatic aerial swooping long shot. We go over the hillsides, and there's like the I forget what kind of flower it is. The flowers, the poppies are being grown in these rows, and it looks really cool. And I thought that was pretty cool. I was like, that's pretty. I'm looking forward to this movie because it's so pretty, and they're really paying attention to the visuals. And then at a certain point, I feel like it snaps over into the visuals being kind of like you're describing. It's almost like it starts out really strong, and then everything becomes a lot more uninteresting. There's also this thing. I don't know. I don't even know if this is true, but there's a thing where you notice a lot when things are either green screened or shot on the volume.
Yes.
Where there's a weird thing happening with the focus where it's like the background is kind of out of focus in a way that is not physical, like it's not out of focus because there's a lens involved. It's out of focus because they made it out of focus.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and that seems to like dominate the dialogue scenes in particular, especially when they're
Mhm.
outside.
Yeah, and I think that like inadvertently comes to this place where like I never felt like Shiz was a place. Like
Mhm.
it just and I'm not saying it needs to be like I need to see how everything connects and I need to completely understand the geography of this place. No, I don't. But I do need to feel like this is a place in the world. And I just felt like it was just this place that was like in like a side dimension and people were just teleporting around and like it didn't feel like even their bedroom it didn't feel to me like anyone actually lived in that bedroom like
Mhm.
at all. Like even in the scenes during What Is This Feeling when they're like battling over control of the room, it just didn't feel like a bedroom. And like look, I know this is supposed to be a stage musical, and in a stage musical you basically are required to suspend your disbelief about this kind of stuff because when you're talking about what is Shiz, it's a few backdrops with a few props like staircases and archways and stuff like that. But like that's okay. When you take a Broadway stage musical and you transpose it into a movie musical, you have to like build the world in a way that you don't have to do it on stage because there's just a different level of expectation going into a thing. And I just feel like they failed to do that. Like
Mhm.
there was nothing about even Oz a little bit felt like it's not that Oz felt surreal, which I think would have been fine. It just felt unreal. Um
Mhm.
and it didn't work on me at all. It just didn't. And part of it maybe is just the CG, which isn't very good. Like I said, I love Defying Gravity. I love that song. I love that moment in both the movie and the show. I felt watching Cynthia Erivo fly around clearly CG at the end of that kind of put a little bit of a hamper on it for me. So maybe it's just the CG. I really don't know.
Yeah. Um, I know exactly what you mean, like the sense of unreality, and not in a way that's fun and fantastical, just in a way that's like none of this feels real. This all feels kind of floaty and fake. I thought the CG was kind of bad. The flying monkeys. It's funny, like I
Yes.
said, the beginning of the movie, you don't get a good look at the flying monkeys, and so it looks fine. But then at the end of the movie, you get a really good look at them, and they look terrible
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
fake. And like, I, I don't know what happened because I'm gonna say the thing that everybody says, but just like when did the Davy Jones Pirates of the Caribbean movie come out? That was
2007.
yeah, like 15 years ago or 20 years, almost 20 years ago, and that was like perfect. And
Mhm.
it just feels like we've given up. We don't even have standards anymore. It's just whatever. Yeah, of course, the CG looks like shit because it always does now for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless you're watching like Pixar or something where like I don't know, whatever. That's an aside. I didn't like that. It's interesting. I was thinking about like the Disney live action remakes and how, like, for example, Aladdin is a movie that I love. I mean, I love the cartoon Aladdin, and so I probably like irrationally enjoyed um, the Aladdin live action remake way more than I would have
Yeah,
if
that's one of my favorite live action remakes, and most people hate it. So I'm
yeah
with you on that.
yeah, and it's because I love Aladdin and I love the songs and that's it. Like that they could have done a much worse job and I probably still would have liked it. So I absolutely don't begrudge anyone who likes the musical and likes the songs and enjoys the movie because they're getting to hear the songs that they like. That's perfectly valid. It's just I had never heard any of these songs before. Here's one. Okay, I guess I am going to criticize the songs a little bit here because I have watched the musical Rent precisely once in
Sure.
my life, and it was 20 years ago
Hmm.
and I can still remember the tune for some of those songs, which means they were good musical songs. They have hooks, they're well written melodies. I can remember many of the melodies from Hamilton. I've maybe listened to the soundtrack to Hamilton 2 or 3 times in my life ever. Uh, so like that's what it is to have a good musical, is to have songs that are memorable and have clear, catchy melodies.
Mhm.
And even Defying Gravity, the song which is apparently like the big headline for this movie, I cannot call to mind the melody for that song right now at all. And
Interesting.
I don't think I honestly don't think it's my deficiency. It's just, I watched the movie the one time and didn't stick. So
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I of course am the exact opposite, and that's probably because I've seen it about a million times this week, and I've had literally every song from this playing on repeat in my head
uh-huh.
all week long. Um, which I mean, look, I'm gonna fully put myself out there and say maybe the reason I don't like this movie as much as I do is because I was kind of forced to watch it as many times as I have. I really don't think that was the case though, because I felt a lot of what I'm talking about right here the first time I watched it. Like I was talking to my wife earlier and she says, I kind of enjoyed it the first time I watched it. And since then, I just have realized how not good it is.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, no, I was kind of there the first time. And I think I've only kind of soured on it even more since then. I do want to say some good things though, and my one good thing is I can't actually believe how good Ariana Grande is in this movie. I really love Cynthia Erivo. I liked her in a lot of the stuff she's done before. She played a character in Bad Times at the El Royale that sung in that, and her voice is beautiful in everything she does. But she was really really captivating in that movie. She played Holly Gibney in the HBO
Mm.
version of the Outsider novel that they made into a TV show. So it was a very different take on Holly Gibney, but it was one I really liked. So like I love Cynthia Erivo, and I like fully expected to come into this movie being like Cynthia Erivo rules. This movie was fine, but Cynthia Erivo is where it's at. And I kind of don't at all. Like I feel like Ariana Grande almost stole the movie in some places. Like she can never fully steal the movie because Elphaba gets Defying Gravity, and like you can't compete with that because that's just what that song is. Um, but like her, like all of Galinda's numbers, I thought were great, and I also think her performance is just really, really good. She's like she gets to be like the fun one, and she's like the only one having fun in
Yeah.
the whole movie. It feels like, and I think she's really playing it up. Like Ariana Grande is a very good singer, and she's a very good mimic. Like I don't know if you ever seen her on SNL, but SNL had this recurring skit every time she's the musical guest or the host, where they're people working in like the Spotify or Pandora control room or whatever, and the system goes down, so they need someone to hop on the mic to sing the songs until they can get the system back up. And it's basically a way of just letting their guests like show how good they are at mimicking certain songs. They've done it with Bruno Mars, and they've done it with Ariana Grande several times, and she's just like really really good at just like getting on the mic and doing a like perfect Britney Spears or like anything else. And she is definitely doing Kristen Chenoweth, who played the character in the original Broadway music. Like she's definitely doing a Kristen Chenoweth impression in both the way she sings and the way she acts in this movie. But it's very good. It's very, very good. And like I was kind of into everything she did, and I thought she was funny. She gets all the laughs in the movie. She gets all like the eye rolly silliness. Just like this is just from the show, but like the fact that she changes her name from Galinda to Glinda, which we
Mhm.
all know her as Glinda
Mhm.
from The Wizard of Oz. But that scene where she's just like, in solidarity with the goat, I'm going to change my name to Glinda, was a great moment. And
Yeah.
and so like I did not have any expectation for Ariana Grande as a performer and actress in this film, and I thought she was great.
Well, you can tell how keyed into pop culture I am that I didn't learn that was Ariana Grande until this conversation. Now I've heard, I know that Ariana Grande is a popular pop musician, but I didn't know that that's who that was. So that's pretty cool, and I agree for what it's worth. In fact, I thought all of the acting was like good to very good in the movie. I kind of thought Jeff Goldblum was Jeff Goldbluming a little bit. I didn't
He's horribly
particularly.
miscast in this.
Yeah.
I love Jeff Goldblum. We talked last week, Jurassic Park, Jeff Goldblum. We love the man. I
Yeah.
think casting him as the Wizard of Oz was a mistake.
I don't. Yeah. To me, I was just like, I don't get what he was supposed to have brought to this role in particular, and
Yeah.
it wasn't
Mhm.
great. But no, I agree. Ariana Grande, she, I think, steals the show is a good phrase there, because like there's so many moments where she gets to have subtlety and interesting character moments. Like her character is a fun character where she starts out as this kind of, disconnected and superficial stereotype character, but then you come to see the hidden depths, and she comes to show her quality in various moments, and she's put into real real moments of character drama, because it's like we understand she's this person who really cares about being popular and her image and the way she's perceived, but also she's not just purely shallow. She actually has a moral core to her. And then you put her in this crux where it's like, okay, there's a horrible injustice happening. Are you going to do the right thing here, even knowing that it's going to cost you your, basically everything that you care about up to this point? And I bought all of that character struggle. Actually, that was one part of the drama that actually did work on me. Like, even after I had kind of checked out, I was like, that was my through line that I was following.
No, as much as I just a few minutes ago insulted the no music dance sequence, I actually think her moment in that really worked on me. Like, I saw a thread somewhere that people was like, why is Glinda dancing with her? Why is this happening? It's like, what do you mean, why is that happening? It's she feels guilty because Glinda did something nice to her for, in her mind, no reason at all, and she was like, oh, I suck, actually. I also really love that moment. I think it's a line from the play where Fiyero looks at her doing her terrible dance and says, man, she really doesn't care what anyone else thinks. And Galinda's just like, of course she does. She just really doesn't want to. I thought that was a great moment. That was like a great moment. And then she joins her. And so, like, I like the story beat of her joining her in the silent dance. I just don't actually like the execution of that from a cinematic perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder, like, a story like this, clearly Elphaba is supposed to be the protagonist, but if you think about it, her character in this movie, I don't want to say she doesn't have an arc, but Galinda's arc is so much better. Because Elphaba is just like this avatar of justice who literally has like a superpower that is triggered by injustice, and she becomes angry, and then she becomes super magical when anything bad is happening. And it's just like consistent, and there's not like a moment of temptation where it's like you could actually become popular and you could sacrifice your concern for these animals, and then you would be. I mean, there's kind of trying to do that at the very end of the movie, but I just
that is supposed to be the moment at the end, right? Where like basically the wizard promises everything she wanted in her "I Want" song at the beginning of the movie. The wizard is going to deliver to her, but the problem is, if you want to call it a problem, is that there's no world that you would ever believe that she was actually for a minute tempted by any of that. Like the second she finds out that he's not really magical, it kind of ruins everything she thought, because she really thought he was going to be the one that cures her of her green skin, right? And the second she finds out that he's the one doing these things to the animals, like it's not about temptation or choice anymore. Like her choice is made up, you just kind of know it. And so that doesn't really have any dramatic oomph to it. And even like in that moment, speaking of how Glinda has the better arc, is like Elphaba tells her, come with me, like we can go out and strike this together and solve these things together. And like I do feel in that moment that Glinda is really at this crossroads between going with her friend and doing what she knows is the right thing, or casting aside her status and everything she cares about, and she chooses wrong at
Right.
the end of the story. Like, and that's actually great drama
Yeah.
and like pathos, and like you feel that. But yeah, from the other side, from the Elphaba side, I mean, and I think part of this is just like a problem, like a fundamental problem with the story. Like, this isn't even a problem with this adaptation or this direction or anything. It's a problem with the story, which is the fundamental thing of the story is, what if the one that you thought was bad was good, and the one that you thought was good was bad? And it's like, that struggles with, okay, so you want me to presuppose that Elphaba was good the whole time, actually, um, but then we have to see her get to a point where why everyone thinks she's bad, and that's just inherently less interesting than the flip side of this is like,
Mhm.
was Glinda actually bad? Like, that to me is just much more intriguing of an idea.
Yeah. I mean, Galinda being bad in this complicated way where like she's not bad in the same in the way as like Madame Morrible, where it's just like, okay, Michelle Yeoh is just playing it as like a calculating villain, basically.
Yeah.
Ariana Grande, Galinda is bad in like a complicated human realistic way where it's like, God, it would be so inconvenient and personally painful for me to do the right thing. So good luck though, you know.
Yeah, she's selfish. She's used to getting what she wants, and she's used to winning. And that's a struggle for her. And yeah, I don't know why I found that more interesting. It's just like, I mean, yeah, it is. Elphaba is just boringly good. Like, she's just good.
Yeah, I mean, it's just because there is a character struggle there, you know.
Yeah,
it's I almost want to watch the musical now just to see, like, does the musical at least realize that Galinda is the more interesting character, or does the musical somehow make Elphaba be a more interesting character somehow? I don't know how they would do that.
Yeah, maybe part of this is solved by you're not thinking about it as much, because, like, again, the expectation for when you are seeing a musical on stage, you are watching the story and you are watching the character and you are watching these things, yes, but you are also watching like real people perform live in front of you, and so there's just like, you care less about that. Like,
Yeah.
like I've seen some people put Cynthia Erivo's Defying Gravity up against like a terrible, shitty recording of um, of Adele Dazeem, Idina Menzel, on stage performing Defying Gravity, and they're like, "Which do you think is better?" And it's like obviously set up to do the Ariana Grande, or to do the Cynthia Erivo one, because it's like a studio quality edited version versus like a shitty camera live on stage. But like, there's a certain excitement to watching a live performance where, you know, as Idina Menzel like ramps up, because Defying Gravity is a song that just goes up the entire time. It's just upward trajectory, up, and like, you realize she's getting there, about to get to the high note, the hard note of the song, and she's gonna have to try to nail this live. She only gets one shot at it, and there's just something exciting and awe-inspiring in that kind of thing that you just can't really ever capture in a film, ever. Because, like, of course Cynthia Erivo was going to hit the note in this performance,
Right.
because if she didn't hit the note, they just would have done it again until she hit the note. And so, like, maybe this stuff that we're talking about fades away when you're there watching it.
So yeah, I think that's all true. I also worry that maybe I have just misunderstood, because now I'm remembering like just the obvious fact that the story is like a frame story, and the frame story is being told by Galinda,
correct,
to the crowd. So in that sense, the story is explicitly from her point of view.
Yes.
And so that does center her a lot more explicitly. I guess I just kind of spaced on that for a second. Which is interesting. I don't know that it changes anything about anything that we just said. It's just I was almost like, why doesn't the movie realize? And it's like, no, the movie does realize that like telling the story from her perspective is probably the right move, because telling it from Elphaba's perspective is going to be very like morally black and white, and thus kind of more boring to watch.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I don't. Again, this is part of the fundamental premise of the thing is like, how much am I supposed to take seriously everything that I saw in The Wizard of Oz when thinking about this story, right? Because like, I mean, you watch The Wizard of Oz. I don't know when's the last time you watched The Wizard of Oz, but I gotta tell you, Matt, the Wicked Witch of the West in The Wizard of Oz is not a misunderstood, complicated moral arbiter of justice.
Uh-huh.
She's just an evil witch, and we have no qualms about throwing water on her and watching her slowly melt to death.
Uh-huh.
Everyone's happy about it. Even the people who work for her are like, "You killed her. Hooray." so like, I mean, it's like an interesting thought experiment to be like, well, what if we were mistaken, right? What if we were mistaken? But I do think it's interesting how it's almost to me that this movie wants it kind of both ways, in that it wants to play in like alt universe version of this, but also it like really wants to fall into prequelitis of how did Indiana Jones get his hat?
Uh-huh.
We have to show how she got her evil witch hat, and we have to show how she got her evil witch broom. And I know you looked this up. I was going to play this fun game with you of which Wizard of Oz characters do you think we saw in this movie and don't know they're Wizard of Oz characters yet. But let me just say to you folks at home, if you don't know about part 2, we've met the Cowardly Lion. I kind of joked about that one already. We've met the Tin Man, and we've met the Scarecrow already. We've also met the Wicked Witch of the East that Dorothy's house lands on. We've met all these characters, and if you pay attention, you can probably guess which ones they are, because they're not very subtle at some of this stuff. There's also this mystery that the movie tries to posit of like, who is Elphaba's real father? Except they cast fucking Jeff Goldblum as the wizard, who has one of the most distinct voices ever, and then they have a person who is definitely not Jeff Goldblum drinking green drink and telling Elphaba's mom how excited he is to see her. It's just like, did they mean for us to just know that her dad's the wizard, or is this really supposed to be a second movie reveal? I just like shocking choices there.
I don't know. I don't think the movie is super concerned about spoilers in the way that people on the internet tend to be.
Yeah, that's
like
fair.
I think we're probably meant to get these things, although I think I didn't get them because I wasn't thinking that there was anything to be gotten.
Yeah,
like
no,
I
that's
wasn't
true.
like, I wonder which of these characters is this Tin Man. That wasn't a thing that occurred to me. So
yeah, and it's like, hey, if Madame Morrible can control the weather, why didn't she just stop the tornado that brought Dorothy here? Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Why didn't she?
yeah,
Or maybe.
yeah.
It's like, this is what I mean, though. It's like, it's just like prequelitis on the extreme mode, right? And it's like, you can't like do a re-envisioning while also moving all the pieces towards their original spot anyway. It's a weird choice to me. And again, this is not a problem specifically with this movie. It's a problem with the concept of this story just broadly.
Well, yeah. So I think again, if this were a 2.5 hour musical, all of that would be fine, because it's just silly. Like, it's just like, oh, hey Scott, here's a funny idea. What if we did like a retelling of the Wizard of Oz, but it was all backwards, and it's like everything happens the same way, but it's like, actually the Wicked Witch was good, and like, that's kind of clever. And but like, if you make it this like self-serious slog, and you have these really deeply serious moments where Elphaba and the goat are having this heart to heart that lasts 15 minutes. It's like, I thought this was supposed to be fun. I'm not having any fun right now. I'm taking this way too seriously for what it is, and like for what the premise can hold.
Yes. No, I agree. Like, I had totally forgotten about the entire subplot of the animals are losing their voice, because I guess the wizard is driving them away because he just fucking hates talking animals for some reason.
Yeah. Never
I
explained.
totally forgotten about that. And then Peter Dinklage walks into the room doing his Tyrion voice as a goat, and you're just like, oh my god, oh
Uh-huh.
my god. I
Eh,
agree, like that, because once again, that is a silly concept, right? This is a Ozian, and like maybe this is just something the movie did. I really need to see the musical again, but that would require me to watch the musical again. I don't want to do that. But like even the idea that the teachers are talking animals is like a silly Ozian concept. Like I don't know if you noticed this on your watch, but like also there's sometimes that the people in Oz just like use sillified version of
yeah,
words.
I like
Um,
that. That was fun.
yeah, and that's fun and weird and Ozian, right? Like it fits. But yeah, then you have Elphaba singing by the side of a lake about how she's in love. She has this unrequited love, and he would never love me because I'm ugly and green. And it's like it's too self serious. Like it needs to be sillier. And the no music hat dance in the show, the musical, was played as just a silly joke. That's what it
Uh-huh.
was, and not this like self-serious, like powerful moment. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just I don't know.
The movie in microcosm kind of reminds me of the way the Harry Potter franchise kind of breaks itself by starting out with this almost Roald Dahl-esque whimsy
Yeah,
and like don't take like yeah owls delivered the mail. No, it's not practical. It's supposed to be silly and whimsical. And then by the end, it's like everything is super regimented, and we're really concerned about the rules of like flu powder versus apparating, and and it's like, oh, so retroactively, I no longer liked the first book because now I know too much about this world, and that's kind of what
yeah,
this movie does to itself, where it undercuts its own whimsy. It's funny, we talk sometimes about movies undercutting their own stakes and drama by being too silly, and I think this movie undercut its silliness by having too much stakes and drama.
yeah. That's perfect. That's a perfect way of describing it. I completely agree. So like, okay, why is this movie not only gonna get nominated for Best Picture, but has a good chance of winning? Why do you think this is? Like, this is the big head scratcher for me, because like I think, yes, I completely understand there is a group of people out there, and I'm not the majority of them I think are 35 to 45-year-old women. I just think that's the case. I think that's the target demo for this movie. That are really loving it. Like there were all these sing-alongs where people got to go with their friends in large groups and go to the movie theater and sing along with it, much to the chagrin of Alamo Drafthouse, who was like, "You're not supposed to talk. That
Uh-huh.
singing is talking." Um, like so like I get why those people really connected to this movie and love this movie, and I think that's totally fine. I completely get it. But like, what about what about everyone else? Like what about the Academy? What about
Yeah.
these pretentious assholes that nominate movies that even Matt has never heard of?
Uh-huh.
Like, is this just like, there's part of me that is like, oh, they're just throwing this a bone, similar to how they did Barbie last year, which by the way, I think Barbie, vastly superior movie to this. Like it's really funny that both last year's version of the show and this year's version of the show, we started with a movie that was like the pop the popular nominee, the one that I guess I would think doesn't actually have a chance in winning, but is like the most popular, made the most money of the 10 nominees. Um, and we had our problems with Barbie too, but I liked Barbie so much better than this movie. But this one seems to have like a real shot at actually winning the prize. Um, it's kind of astounding to me, actually.
Yeah, I don't have a good explanation for you. I mean, part of it is part of it, I guess, is that there doesn't seem to be the equivalent of an Oppenheimer from last year,
Correct. Yeah.
where last year I don't think I ever wavered from thinking that Oppenheimer was going to win the Oscar and probably every other Oscar, and that was correct because it was just obvious. This year, that doesn't really exist. So I think maybe it's just much more of an open field. Maybe we're going to watch a bunch of these other movies and just be like, yeah, these are all these are all really good, but maybe these are all more really good on the level of like Anatomy of a Fall, where it's like that was really interesting. That was a really good movie.
Hmm.
Best Picture though, maybe I don't know. And then it'll just and then maybe it'll make more sense there. Just in an environment where there's not some just like career defining slam dunk by a master director. Um, but I mean, there's also just the possibility that maybe people are kind of just talking and saying, I think this movie has a real shot at Best Picture because like that's the thing to say, and maybe that's
Sure.
just not true at all.
Yeah, fair. I think that's totally fair. It's really funny because like Dune Part Two does not have a shot at winning Best Picture. I actually don't even think Denis Villeneuve is going to be nominated for Dune Part Two, and a lot of the reason for that people are saying is because of the whole. I think we talked about this last week. Kind of the whole Lord of the Rings thing where they wait until the last film in a series to throw awards at the person. But like Wicked's here and it's a part one. Like
Yeah.
the same thing is happening with Wicked, and yet I think it's gonna do fairly well at the Academy Awards. Really really astounding to me.
Yeah. I
I,
also, as much as I love Dune, I am capable of admitting that movie might not work on everyone. Like,
oh yeah, no,
l-
I
l-
mean
so, I'm just being objective. Like, I
I
don't think
would.
like Dune is not Oppenheimer. Is kind of what I mean
I would
there.
be more surprised by Dune Part Two winning than Wicked winning. Like that would be more shocking to me, and I'd be like, really, Dune Part Two. I mean, I loved that movie, but yeah, like, I completely.
Yeah, I think for a variety of reasons, I actually agree with you.
Mhm. Oh, man, Wicked. I guess. Are you gonna see Wicked Part Two when it comes out, Matt?
If you make me,
I mean, if
like,
it's nominated for Best Picture, you
right.
might have to.
I mean, to be serious, I currently feel no like urge to watch it. I barely finished watching this movie. But yeah, if we end up having to watch it, I will watch it.
I will say I have enjoyed my son's similar to Moana 2. My son's like kind of falling in love with the music of this movie has you folks aren't going to believe this after hearing me talk disparagingly for an hour, but it has like softened my opinion on it because it's just watching my son enjoy it is always enjoyable. Um,
Sure.
yeah,
Sure. I mean that I've said many times, like when my kids like something, it makes me like it more because it's like, oh, like this is a pure and simple thing that can be enjoyed by children, and then I can like tune into it on that wavelength. I
sure.
mean, one funny thing is I invited my kids to watch this movie with me, and a couple of them would like drift into the room and watch it for a minute and then leave, so it wasn't working on them. Um, but
Yeah,
that to take that for what it is, I guess.
I mean that's why I say that I don't think this movie was made for children.
Mhm.
Like all joking aside, I do think the target demo of this movie is like middle-aged women. Like
Uh-huh.
I just think it is.
Yeah.
I don't think they made a movie that specifically was like, well, we're gonna get the kids with this one. I really don't think so.
Yeah, I think you're. I mean, it's not on the thematic level. It's not a fairy tale. Like even the musical is not a fairy tale.
Yeah.
It's more. I don't want to say adult themes because that's not quite right. It's just more advanced themes than children are really capable of appreciating. Perhaps.
Hmm. I really wanted to play the game with you of who do you think the scarecrow is, but you went ahead and looked all this up, so it's not fair anymore.
I'm sorry. I think
Yeah.
I think I may have even looked it up years ago, back when I was like, what is this wicked thing that people are talking about? And then I read about it, and then it was somewhere in my brain for all those years. So
Just
I
wait
don't
till you
know.
see who they cast as Dorothy in the sequel.
Do we know that?
I don't think we actually know who
Oh,
they've
okay.
cast. Like, I think someone asked John Chu at a um interview, and he was like very weird about it, or he's like, "I'm not going to tell you that. Have we cast? Yes, we have. I'm not going to tell you." It's like we've cast Dorothy for this movie, of course, because you see her for a second, and I was like, "That was a CG Dorothy, right?" Like, when they go flying over the Yellow Brick
Yeah.
Road, and we see them walking down the road briefly. I was
Uh-huh.
like, those were all CG people, right? There was not a human in that
No.
group of people walking down the road.
That was 100% CG, but maybe they had to know what actress they were going to cast so they would know what to make the CG look like. But no,
I guess maybe.
I agree that was definitely CG. Although, I mean, to me, she just looked like Dorothy.
Judy Garland.
Judy Garland, right?
Yeah,
So.
yeah. How'd you think about how they found out which color to color the yellow brick road?
I don't even remember that.
You don't remember that? He showed a model of Oz, and he was gonna make a road system, but he wasn't sure what color to color it, and so they pressed buttons to choose different colors and decided on yellow.
Okay.
Weren't you always wondering why there was a yellow brick road and then why it was yellow?
Wow, what a stupid reason. I must have had a child talking to me.
Actually, that's the kind of silly nonsense bullshit that the movie needed almost more of. It just fully lean into the nonsense of it.
That's a good point, because that's better than it being some kind of deep lore explanation. It's just it's interesting because Oz, I don't know much about this other than the fact that Oz was like this, big thing that the author took really seriously. Actually, do you maybe you know more about this than I do?
Never read an Oz story. I know absolutely nothing about Oz outside of I watched the first movie a whole bunch because my mom really loved that movie.
Yeah, me also. I have never read any of the other Oz stories, but like apparently there's a bunch of them, and it's this elaborate construction. It's a Tolkien-esque, complex, multifaceted subcreation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it is really sinister and dark and complicated and rich and full of lore. And the fact that we've only really been exposed to the Wizard of Oz gives us like a skewed sense of that. I have no idea. I just think it's interesting that there is this deep, like there's a bunch of other Oz stuff, and it just seems like it's probably just not very good, is the truth. Because if it was good, then people would like tell you about it, or there would be memes.
What's actually really interesting about this entire conversation is I've never read it, but as we said at the beginning of the show, the musical and this movie are based on a novel that came out in the mid 90s called Wicked.
Uh-huh.
And talking about how our favorite parts are like the nonsense silliness, Wicked, the novel, is like a super serious adult dark story that's like examining the nature of what evil is. And like really trying to get to the bottom of what is evil, how does a person become evil, nature versus nurture, right? Like ostracization, like radicalization. Like it is a really serious and adult examination of this. There's like a lot of sex in this book. There's like a lot of murder. It's like super hardcore, and it's just like nothing. Like they took that and went like, oh, happy musical.
That's really funny because I think, okay, now some things are clicking together now that you've explained that, because I think what I read many years ago was a description of the novel Wicked, and and people were talking about this musical, and I was like, that sounds really unpleasant and dark, and and then it turned, and then now I think they probably lightened it up a lot for the musical, and probably the movie, one assumes.
Well, and maybe that's kind of where we're seeing this like weird shift into the darkness is coming from the fact that this is adapting plot points from the book, at least. And so it's trying to do these whimsy, these fun Broadway musical numbers and things, but it also like trips into just sometimes if in this story things have to happen, right? And that, like, especially Act 2 has some like fucking crazy dark shit happening. We know what happens to the Wicked Witch of the East, right? Like she gets a house landed on her. That's a character we know already. So we're gonna get to see that happen to her. And maybe that's just like the book like coming out,
Yeah, I hope that's just like in Monty Python and the Holy Grail when the Frenchmen launched the wooden rabbit out of their castle and it flies into the sky and then it lands on the one character who's the horse. I hope that's what it looks like when the house lands on that character. I look, because you like it's not going to. The joke I was trying to make there unsuccessfully was like, it's going to be super serious and grim and boring, and like what it should be is silly and ridiculous, like when somebody gets crushed to death by something in Monty Python. That's the connection I was trying to make there.
I gotcha. Yeah, it took me a sec, but I got there. Yeah. All right. Anything else you wanted to say about Wicked?
Not at all.
Okay. That is Wicked. Genuinely hope you folks that have really enjoyed this movie aren't like angry with you. Probably not. Just like things. No one's saying you're wrong for liking things, right?
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
Totally, exactly. I'm not trying to persuade anyone not to like it. I'm just reporting my experience.
Yep.
I'm happy that people like this movie. And
I wish I loved it. I really do.
Yeah.
It would make my son's constant requests to watch it a lot more enjoyable for me.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, but that is Wicked. If you have any opinions, I think if there's anyone out there that wants to answer Matt's like posed question of like, if you really, really love this musical, what specifically it is about it that you love, we'd love to hear it. I'm actually genuinely curious. My wife doesn't really like this musical either, so I've never really had like a long, deep conversation with a person who was just like, this is their favorite musical. I love this musical. This is very important to me. I was there on opening night to see this adaptation, and I'm really excited for the next one. I'd like, not because I think you're crazy or anything. Please don't misunderstand me. I just want to know.
Right. Yeah. It's I can see it, I think is why I asked. Like I can see someone loving this movie. I just don't get it. Right.
Yeah. Totally.
Anyway.
Yeah, so if you are that person though and are comfortable reaching out, please, you can email us at doofmedia@gmail.com, head on over to Instagram @doofmedia, Twitter @doofmedia, Reddit, that's reddit.com/r/doofmedia, where there will be a thread for this episode, and let your opinion known.
Yeah, and if you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, we encourage you to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
Hey, Matt, speaking of subscribing to things, we have a brand new podcast that the feed of is up now. It's officially beginning next week with our first episode, but that podcast is called Flanagan's Wake. It is an in-depth exploration and analysis of the film and television of Mike Flanagan. So if you like our Deconstructing Director series, where we take a look at directors and watch all their stuff, I think you're going to enjoy this as well. So it will be just Mike Flanagan, and you can find it anywhere podcasts are found at Flanagan's Wake. You search for that and subscribe. And the first episode on Mike Flanagan's Absentia will be coming on the 16th. What are days? Hold on.
I think that's right.
On the 16th of January. That's next week. Pretty excited about it. It's going to be available everywhere podcasts are, and it's going to be available on YouTube, where we will have a video version where you get to see our faces and as we talk. It's just a big change for us. But please subscribe to that. Please let us know what you think of Absentia and Flanagan's Wake. We're really excited about that show.
That's right. Yeah, and it'll just be on the usual Doof YouTube channel, by the way.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
And also, if you want to support Flanagan's Wake, if you want to support the Doofcast, if you just want to support us, you can do that at patreon.com/doofmedia. You can join at any of the available levels. We do have bonus podcasts we release on Patreon. We had just this past week the State of the Doofian, which is Matt and I get together and chat about the last year and the future for Doof Media and everything we're doing. So that's always a fun conversation. You can join and listen to that. Also, we have our recurring series looking at the television show From, in a podcast named Two. This past Wednesday, we just released our discussion on episodes 3 and 4 of season 1 of that over on Patreon. So that's going great so far. Matt, we got to watch those next 2 episodes and get that recorded.
Sounds good. Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah.
And while you're checking all that stuff out, also please consider rating and reviewing the Doofcast on Apple Podcasts. Each review does help us to get more exposure and introduce new people to the content that we make here.
That is correct. All right, folks. Next week, our Catching Up with the Oscars series continues as we cover the Netflix film Emelia Perez. Matt, I think this is one that actually, for a lot of people, is more surprising than Wicked for being on this list. I think this is a very contentious, controversial film that a lot of people like a lot, and a lot of people really don't like. I haven't seen it, obviously, but I think that is the kind of film that interests me most sometimes, and I'm pretty excited to check this one out, actually.
Yeah, that sounds exciting to me.
Yeah, so that'll be next week. We'll see you then.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.